This episode contains some descriptions of very harsh and violent audiovisual content that may affect some people's sensibilities. Normally, when you have nightmares, you wake up and they disappear. Even the darkness is a relief. Throughout 2018, some Facebook content moderators started having nightmares that didn't go away when they were startled in the wee hours of the morning or later, when they woke up to get up. The nightmares stayed with them. They were with them when they were doing something else, when they were with friends or family, or when they were on their way to work. When they arrived at their post, they saw them again, but they were no longer nightmares. There, in the tower, they became reality.
This is Hechos Reales, the podcast where we tell you stories that look like fiction, but happened in real life. Follow us wherever you listen to your podcasts. Episode 2, The Tower.
Now it's being linked to an alleged breach of information security with Facebook.
It's actually a data analytics company dedicated to one thing: figuring out how to manipulate you.
Many Facebook users were paid to take a personality test funded by
Zuckerberg breaking his silence, apologizing to Facebook users for the Cambridge Analytica privacy scandal.
March 2018. A scandal has Facebook on the ropes. The data of millions of the social network's users has ended up in the hands of Cambridge Analytica, a company dedicated to influencing elections around the world with false or biased content. But in addition, the main propagator of this faulty content is Facebook itself.
But it's clear now that we didn't do enough to prevent these tools from being used for harm as well. And that goes for fake news.
In the wake of the scandal, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg appears before the US Senate to offer a mea culpa.
And it was my mistake, and I'm sorry.
He announces that his company will hire thousands of people to work on reviewing content and fighting hate speech and fake news. Barely a month later, Barcelona wakes up to one of those news stories that a city likes to give.
Vamos a Barcelona porque la emblemática Torre Agbar vuelve a ser noticia, tal y como adelanta hoy 5 días. Facebook instalará en 8 plantas de ese edificio un equipo que va a intentar controlar y eliminar, si es posible, las noticias falsas.
Facebook tendrá en Barcelona un equipo de 500
The Glòries Tower is one of Barcelona's most emblematic buildings, a futuristic skyscraper that outlines its skyline and symbolizes its economic power. The authorities welcome Facebook's decision, talk about the city's importance as a technology hub and its ability to attract talent due to its excellent quality of life and cosmopolitan character. In a few days, CCC, Competence Call Center, the company subcontracted by Facebook to carry out the content review, begins job interviews to select staff. Thousands of people apply, of many different nationalities, mostly young people. One of them is Kyra.
I was invited for an interview. It was like a group setting with around 15 other people, all from different nationalities. They explained that they were starting a big project in Barcelona for their client, which was a social media company. No name was mentioned. Our job would be to review reported social media content, and we had to take actions according to the policies of the social media company. And well, they were very excited about this project, and they told us a couple of times that it would be a very important job.
Kyra Sennen is half Dutch, half Indonesian. She has recently moved to Barcelona. She is a model, loves sport, and has studied communication sciences. She has worked as an external relations manager at a university office in the Netherlands and is now looking for a job in Barcelona. In mid-2018, when she shows up for her interview with CCC at La Torre, Kyra is excited about the city.
For me, Barcelona was a a diverse and luminous place with a beach. The weather was always good, a lot of sunny days. Plus, it was a city also it is a city that's very international, welcomes foreigners. So I wanted to make the most out of it.
The job he was offered that day, without yet explaining what it would consist of or what company he would finally work for, meant a stable income, around 30,000 euros a year. There is also a guaranteed salary increase after a year and very attractive bonuses for working on public holidays or night shifts. It seems like a good opportunity, even with the potential drawbacks.
They mentioned that the content that we would see might contain some graphic images or sensitive content. And then they mentioned that there would always be a wellness team available with a team of professionals to support our resilience and well-being. What they did ask us was to share the most shocking content that we would ever seen online and how I would respond if I would see offensive content or graphic content like child abuse. And what I told them that I had really no idea, as I don't know how I would respond to that, as I never was exposed to that before. But as they mentioned the wellness team, I told them, okay, I will reach out to the wellness team just in case I would feel that I would need the resilience and the support for them.
After the interview, Kyra is offered the job. On the day she goes to sign the contract, still not knowing much about her future role, she is forced to sign a confidentiality clause. From now on, everything will be secret.
They mentioned that I was not allowed to share anything about the job that I would start doing. I could not share any information with my relatives, with my friends, with anyone outside of work, not during my employment contract or even afterwards. Well, at that time, it all felt a little bit weird to me, honestly. I decided in the end to sign for the job, as a few days before that, it was shared in the media that Facebook would start reviewing fake news in Torre Agbar. So somehow I made this connection that I would start doing that.
For 2 weeks, Kyra begins a training process. On the one hand, she receives a crash course in world current affairs, and on the other, she has to study rules or policies that she's told she will have to apply every day in order to be able to revise content. Finally, they tell him who he will be working for.
It was a very intense 2 weeks of receiving a lot of information. We learned on that first day that we would become the content moderators for Facebook. So that was the first time that it was confirmed. And the trainer told us that we would contribute in keeping Facebook and Instagram to be a safe place where people would feel empowered to communicate and that they could do that in a safe environment by our job.
Kyra then understands that her job will be to analyze the content on these social networks and report it, not only if it is false, but especially if it is offensive or violent, always according to the protocol she is learning these days. What they teach her and the other employees in the training is how to know what content should not be published and how to make quick decisions to prevent it from being seen by millions of people. Sometimes it's an algorithm that detects compromised content. Sometimes it's images that have been reported by someone who has seen them in their feed.
The training also, it was very generic, the things that we saw. The things that were used in the training itself felt more like images from a movie, like a shot of a movie, rather than real life pictures. Well, what affected me a little bit, or what touched me during the training, was a photo of a girl. It was a black and white photo with a main focus on her on the inside of her arm with cuts, and there was an overlaid caption, "I'm fine, thank you." So this was an example to explain the self-harm and suicide policy.
After the training, the company distributes Kyra and her colleagues to the different floors of the tower, according to the countries of origin of the content they will be moderating. Kyra arrives on the 11th floor, where she reviews long queues of video in Dutch, Belgian, and English. These videos are called tickets. There, she first goes through a simulation period. That is, she audits content that has already been moderated by other professionals to see if they agree on the rating.
Our job was to review content that was reported. And we had to review that based on the community standards of Facebook. So we learned to understand the community standards. One thing that we would always have to keep in mind was that not to think about our own opinion or how we would, from our intuition, respond to a ticket, or what we would think that how the ticket should be actioned. But we had to leave that personal opinion behind, and we had to think in the spirit of the policy.
The job of not thinking and applying the rules is complicated because they have to try to avoid their biases, not to be guided by their prejudices. Every failure they make penalizes them. From the beginning, they are given a number, 98.
The quality of my work and my performance as a content moderator was only evaluated by my accuracy percentage. And this had to be a minimum of 98% when I was actioning a ticket. And if I would make a different decision compared to the quality auditor, then that would have an impact on my accuracy rate. And the accuracy rate is the most important thing, basically, in your job. It's your guarantee to keep your job. Your job is to find a violation in the ticket, but you have to make sure that in case there is a violation, that it's going to be deleted for the highest violation. So you have to pay a lot of attention to every detail in a ticket. I had, for example, once a very graphic ticket. It was a video where a woman was stabbed multiple times. And, you could see her muscle tissues. It was very graphic. So I deleted it for violation under the graphic violence policy. But I overlooked her naked nipple. So the quality auditor found that I was making a mistake. It affected my accuracy rate, and my number 98 went down.
Demanding and perfectionist as she is, Kyra learns quickly from her mistakes and applies herself in order not to lose her success rate.
I later on had, for example, another ticket filming the result of a severe bus crash with victims. They were scattered all over the street. Some were still in the bus, some outside. Some were alive, some were dead. It got very graphic to see, but I learned from my mistakes. So I started to zoom in the details of that video, which was not nice to see, but on the lookout to find a violation under the nudity policy, because that's a higher violation.
Kyra is good at the job. She always maintains 98% accuracy. Barely a month after starting, she gets new tickets. They get more and more complicated. Harassment, hate speech, graphic violence, terrorism, and dangerous organization, human trafficking. She never knows what she's going to find. Before, she knew if she was moderating a queue of tickets dedicated exclusively to political offenses, for example, but now she doesn't know what kind of content she's going to find.
That was actually the first time that I realized, I'm affected by it. I feel it inside my body. It feels uncomfortable. And I had to watch a lot of ISIS-related executions. They just execute people. They slit off their heads in such a cruel way. And the blood is everywhere and the head is next to the body. It's different. It's weird to see, of course, these things, knowing that this is reality, this happened. I started to realize, okay, this is doing something to me.
Kyra's working days are long and exhausting. Sometimes she works weekends and sometimes the night shift. She barely has time to socialize with other colleagues. When she arrives at the tower, she has to leave her mobile phone in a locker. It is forbidden to use it during work. His eyes have to be on the computer. Every action has to be registered in the system, but it has to be done just in time. Not a minute before and not a minute after. Nor can you stop whenever you want. The breaks are 5 minutes every hour.
And in that time, you had time to go to the toilet, to refill your bottle of water, to maybe check your phone in the lockers. And then we had to run back to work, and everything needed to be registered.
The lunch break is 20 minutes at a fixed time of the day. You can't eat in front of the screen. It's also forbidden. But going outside becomes a gymkhana.
And as you imagine, in Torre Agbar, there are only 6 elevators. And At one point, there were more than 500 people, or even more, working as a content moderator, and everyone wanted to run down, get some fresh air, enjoy your lunch outside.
With only 5 minutes for a break, with hardly any time for lunch, work in the tower becomes lonely and isolated because socializing is not allowed either. The day's objectives must be met.
The target was 250 tickets per day. So you work. The moment that you start working, you put your headphone on and you're just isolated in your own world of reviewing tickets. It's not allowed to talk and socialize with each other. Of course, you ask your questions to the supervisors if you're having issues with handling tickets. But there were in the 5-minute screen break some moments to share some words with each other, but it was difficult to really get to know each other during work. Those conditions were all very, very stressful. Not only the content that we were watching, but there was no moment to relax a little bit.
Despite the difficulties of the job and the toughness of the content she has to moderate, Kyra is quite good at it. Her evaluations are good, and that means she is being considered for, in theory, better positions. At Christmas 2018, her coordinator calls her at the office to offer her a new assignment. She will be moderating a new ticket queue, a high-priority queue, but there most of the content is suicides and self-harm.
Started to feel as if my energy and happiness was just sucked out of me. I came home, I started to become more emotional, bursting out in tears when arriving to my safe house and safe place, but also being more irritated there. And in the following months, I started to go through life as a zombie. I was more often called in sick.
At night, the lights of the tower that are left on mean nothing to pedestrians enjoying a jovial nocturnal city. But inside, moderators like Kyra have to deal with the worst sights, the weirdest sights, the ones that leave them with the most shocking images. It is in the dark that people dare to expose the worst of what humans are capable of. The moderators begin to use a colloquial name for the tower, Mordor.
We were working for a long time, 7 and 8 days in a row without a day off. And this always felt to me as if I was running a marathon, no matter which shift I was on. I felt like a zombie and did most of the things towards the end of the shift, like on day 5 or 6 on the automatic pilot. I would make the most mistakes on those days. And I think that combination, together with the content that I started to see, gave me like a permanent feeling of being jet-lagged. I gradually also became very numb.
Kyra loses energy. She stops enjoying many of the things she used to do. She starts saying no more often than yes. She is enrolled in a 3-month Spanish course, but now has trouble staying focused. She finds it difficult to memorize new things. She has the feeling that she hasn't learned anything. On her days off, she tries to disconnect from everything. Her body starts to suffer. One evening in May, she walks home after a day at the tower. She is tired. The people she meets seem strange to her. Suddenly, she begins to anticipate their potential actions. She imagines that the man walking next to her throws himself into the road, that the other young man on the terrace throws himself into the void, that the bus crashes in front of her.
Started to go through life like that, thinking that I was seeing a ticket, reviewing a ticket. In reality, it was difficult. I think because while you're working and handling a ticket or reviewing a ticket, you never know what you expect. So I guess in the back of your mind, you expect to see the worst. And that's how I start to feel how life started to be. Yeah, it was really as if life, my job never stopped almost. I was a content moderator in a way, 24 hours. So I went to the doctor.
The doctor gives her a medical discharge. She needs rest. Kyra analyzes what is happening to her. She knows that all those images and the stress of her job are starting to hurt her, but she is unable to measure the consequences it will have on her. She convinces herself that it's just a matter of rest, and she returns to her post. But one night in the tower,
I saw someone filming while he was entering a room, and there was a bed in a room with a man on it. He had his pants down, and then there was a toddler, I think a 2 or 3 year old girl there, and the guy was abusing her. He was raping her. The girl basically was numbed. She was not giving any response. She was not crying. She was not protecting herself. She was just laying there and just let it all happen. It was in a setting, I believe, somewhere in India. No one was talking in the video. That silence was also horrible. That made it even more intense to see. And then when the guy came off the girl, basically, I saw her eyes, and it was heartbreaking to see that look. I froze. I could not think. I didn't know what this. Well, somehow I know what it was, but I didn't know how to action, and I froze. I could not think and handle anything anymore. Then the team manager came, like, "Oh, what's happening? All? What do you have?" And he came over. He saw the ticket again, and then he made a very inappropriate comment. It felt so inhuman.
What Kyra sees haunts her at night, in her dreams, but also when she is awake. The nightmares don't go away when she wakes up. Sometimes they even continue in the early hours of the day, when the city is still dark.
So something broke in me that after seeing all of that, and the way how someone responded to that at work, the world didn't felt safe anymore.
His physical health also suffers. It's not just her mind anymore. She begins to have absences of menstruation.
I was not menstruating for months. So I went to my gynecologist to do a hormone test, and the results gave an indication as if I was in my perimenopause. And she told me that if I ever wanted to have children, that I had to freeze my eggs already. And I was so shocked by this, didn't expect that. So I realized also inside my body, things were just so affected by it.
Kyra is off work for 2 more weeks. She has more tests at the gynecologist, practices yoga, and within days feels herself starting to recover. Encouraged, she returns to the tower. But after a few hours in front of the computer, she realizes that any image, no matter how offensive, affects her more than before. One evening, after her shift, Kyra leaves work. She's tired, walking a little fast. She just wants to go home. Someone walks near her. Kyra walks faster. The footsteps get closer, breathing quickens. Kyra looks out of the corner of her eye, turns her head, and someone passes very close to her. The footsteps grow distant. It's just a pedestrian, someone also returning home. Nothing more.
He passed me by walking very fast, and he came very close to me. No bad intentions at all, but it shocked me so much. And I froze. And this reaction and the feeling that I had I got that out of the blue. It was the first time that I also experienced this outside on the street.
Kyra understands that she is on the verge of paranoia. She goes back to the doctor and is discharged. She can no longer work under these conditions.
Then in September 2019, I could barely sleep. I had more often than before the nightmares, and I could not function anymore.
At home, she's thinking about everything. She has to make sense of his work, to talk about it, so she decides to ask the tower's wellness department for help.
I asked if I could have a talk with people from the wellness team, But since I was on my sick leave, I could not see anyone at work. I could not enter work at all. There was no help. Very frustrating because there's the whole time everyone mentioned, there's wellness whenever you feel the need for them to talk with them. They are the only people who understand work. So I felt very, very alone, disappointed in work.
Kyra feels helpless. She locks herself at home. She doesn't want to see anyone. She can't even watch films. Barcelona is, at that moment, a grey city that only makes her afraid and sad.
Yeah, there was no world all of a sudden anymore. That was the feeling. And from inside, I was crying desperately for help. And I was so exhausted for not receiving any help. Felt like the whole world was almost against me. And I didn't have the strength either to get myself back. So working as a content moderator gave me speed course world knowledge. But unfortunately, I learned about the darkest and the cruelest things that people are doing to themselves. Not only to themselves, to each other and to animals. And eventually I started to go through life in darkness and pain as well.
It is March 2020. The coronavirus has hit the planet in a way never seen before. Contagions have multiplied in a matter of weeks, and governments are beginning to take exceptional measures. Before Spain declares a state of alarm, Kyra leaves Barcelona. Her partner is giving a series of lectures in the Philippines and is stranded there. When he sees what is going to happen all over the world coming, he calls her to tell her, "Take a plane. We are going to Bali." Kyra arrives in a new place to start a new life with a different rhythm, surrounded by nature, in a paradise dreamed of by many. It couldn't be farther from the tower. Gone are all those horrible images and that feeling of loneliness at work that she has experienced since she started as a content moderator. She never got to talk much with her colleagues. There was never much time to share and exercise the bad experiences they had as moderators. Everything that has happened to her, has it happened only to her?
A ver, lo más duro que vi, un video en el cual cortaron la garganta a una persona en el desierto.
Cuando ve a alguien hacer daño a un niño, o un daño físico o un daño mental, eso hace choquearte. Y a ver el mundo de una manera negativa, siendo un espectador de ese contenido.
Creo que mi padre es para proteger a los usuarios. Creo, sobre todo, lo hace para que sus inversores vean Facebook e Instagram.
Yo creo que una de las cosas más fuertes que he oído fue torturas animales.
Un sentimiento de angustia hacia el futuro. Mucho de eso.
Esas imágenes me tocaron bastante, estuvieron bastante fuertes.
Lo más duro que he visto fue una violación de menor, sexo entre un adulto y un menor. Eso fue fuerte.
La verdad que es un trabajo de mierda, donde realmente no he aprendido nada. Como mucho he aprendido a moderar contenidos según los valores de meta.
It is the summer of the pandemic. The world is returning to normal after months of confinement at home. During that time, most of the employees of the tower have worked online, without so many rules as to leave the phone, without so much control for breaks. All this has allowed them to be more in contact with each other. They have chatted, shared their hard experiences, and also some of the mental problems they are suffering. Some of them are encouraged to file a complaint.
The first case came into us in July 2020. He came to us by email through the web where he explained to us that he was doing this. I was the one who saw the email, and it caught my attention because I never imagined that 8 blocks from here that was happening.
This is Francesc Feliu. He is a lawyer. When he reads that email, his first reaction is one of bewilderment, of surprise, but he is not able to measure exactly the scope of the story he is being told. Days later, the young man comes to his office.
He explained the story to me, and when I heard it, which confirmed my surprise, but still exponential, the reaction was, "Hostia, nobody knows this. I have been a user of social networks now, more intensely now, but I was unaware that this was happening at that level. Everyone knows that there is violent content on the networks, we all know this, but not at that level. This guy was in a section that is high priority, which is the most beastly thing on the networks. And that's it, it's on Facebook Live, and then on Instagram, and it was live suicides and live acts of terrorism. So that was continuous, it was a queue of videos and they call it tickets. So at that time, they had to view between 300 and 500 tickets a day. 8 hours watching violent content like live rape, beheadings, suicides, live acts of terrorism, whether it's how to a person. Like if you take a gore movie and you're watching it in real. In other words, let them cut it open, let them take him out, and the person who is alive. If this is what we're talking about. And to be told this is one day after another, this was like, what are you telling me?
In the following weeks, the lawyer begins to prepare his strategy. He knows that he is going to attack a monster like Facebook and that he has to get as much information as possible. He will not lack, because in the following weeks and months, other young people come to his office saying the same thing. That they could not say where they worked, that they had very little time to rest and much less to relate to each other, and that when they got sick, they were told it was not because of the images, but because of some personal affectation.
Todos tienen el mismo patrón. They all have the same pattern, which is long exposure to extremely violent content. And they have constantly provoked the origin symptomatology of these people. Then there are those who deal with it in a different way. There are some people who have severe addictions to pornography, addictions to drug use, alcohol consumption. So the answer they give me is that it is impossible to moderate without having a clouded mind.
Feliu gathers all the testimonies. He has the whole picture. Many are afraid to tell him the whole story because they think they are breaching the confidentiality clauses. The lawyer explains to them that these clauses are useless in view of the seriousness of the facts they are denouncing. Some of his clients have attempted suicide.
It was a guy who had seen a live murder of a person who was grabbed from behind and shot in the head and in the street. He was scared to death that somebody was going to get him. No? I mean, it was like something traumatic. Of course, the mind is it's very fucked up. It's very fucked up.
From all of them, Feliu also has an idea. His clients told him that the company forced them to watch the videos to the end, even if they were already objectionable in the first few seconds. Why? What had they really been doing? Training the algorithm, teaching an artificial intelligence to do the job that was causing them so much personal cost.
So these people, to my way of thinking, have worked. It's been a guinea pig of guinea pigs, totally unbeknownst to them.
With all the information he has accumulated, the lawyer decides to confront the tower. The company had processed some medical leaves for mental disorders as common illnesses, but for Feliu and the Social Security, it is an occupational accident. As the company does not agree, we go to court. After seeing the whole matter in a hearing on January 12th in Barcelona, the judges are clear. Work-related stress is the sole, exclusive, and unquestionable trigger. This is the first sentence that recognizes that mental illness is caused by moderating this type of content. For Feliu, things do not end there. According to the indications that the company had not evaluated the risks, for indications that the company had not evaluated the risks for its employees, even knowing the problems that were causing them to visualize all these images. So he decided to go to court.
It seemed to me a real aberration that a company dedicated to the technological world mistreated its workers in this way, because it is a mistreatment. It is a labor mistreatment. When I speak of helplessness, is that the company is given the same age, no matter how these people were already, and I refer to the facts. They knew that people were taking sick leave. What did you do? Nothing. He kept the same strict control of the working conditions of how they do their job. And that's it. For that in a number, they've given them the same. And now in 2023, we are in 2024. The company's position is the same, is to deny the major that with them, this film does not work.
Francesc Feliu and his clients are waiting for the courts to decide whether they will admit the criminal complaint they have filed against TELUS International and its directors for a crime of omission of the duty of care. CCC, the company of the TELUS International Group, which is in charge of content moderation in the tower, has chosen not to speak for this episode.
I've seen the news that some people have denounced the situation. I'm very happy that they took the strength, that they have the strength to do this. And it's necessary that we all talk and share how this work is done. To me, it's very sad that this job exists, but unfortunately, I think the job still needs to be done. But the working conditions need to be changed. It needs to be made more human in order not to generate all these problems.
Many of those days have been a blur. Kyra has had a hard time taking the leap to tell this story, but says she has done so because she felt it was necessary to share it. There are still a lot of people at the tower and elsewhere who are dedicated to deleting content that the rest of us don't want to see.
Yeah, I'm definitely doing much better. I'm happy indeed that the dark days are over. It took me a long time to reach the point where I am now.
Hechos Reales is a true story podcast created and directed by Álvaro de Cosa. Subscribe on your favorite audio platform, give us your support, and follow us on Instagram at podcast_Hechos Reales. Hechos Reales is an original true story podcast. Direction and narration, Álvaro de Cózar. Executive producer, Pilar Sayans. Screenwriters, Álvaro de Cózar, Eva Lamarca, and Carola Solé. Production assistant, María Baldassano. Sound design, Carlos Díaz Marjaliza and Josefina Rosenwasser Marín. Sound editing, Ana Gañán. Visual design, Andreu Gallard. Title voiceover, Marta García García. Title music, Iván Cester.